Good afternoon, calling the meeting of the Regional School District Planning Board to order at 5:01 p.m. The meeting is being recorded. Roll call attendance, Charlie,
Here.
Carl, George,
Here.
Tom Burkle, Jim,
Here.
Deb,
Here.
Peter Taylor,
Here.
Steve,
Here.
Don,
Here.
John, Kim, Susan, you're here.
I am here.
Amazing. Susan's very far away. Tara. Nancy,
Here.
Colin,
Here.
Nadine,
Here.
Bonnie, Michael,
Here.
Patrick, Bill,
Here.
Marie,
Here.
Andy, Sarah.
Here.
Great. Did anyone arrive while I was taking roll call? No, okay. So we've got some time constraints tonight because at least a couple of our board members have another meeting at 7 o'clock in Great Barrington. So I put approval of the minutes at the end of the meeting so we could move pretty expeditiously. And I'm going to be limiting public comments at the start of the meeting to 5 minutes, and we will take additional public comments at the end of the meeting. So do we have any public comments now? I don't see any hands. Don, I see your hand is up.
All right, let me take just 1 sec or two. I wanted to thank you and Jake and his team because tonight we're going to be probably deciding finally on this agreement. And as you know, I've been doing agreements either as a lawyer or a judge for close to a half century. And I think I'd like to say to the other members of the committee that they have the good luck and good fortune to have an agreement before them that is extremely clear, well organized, fair, and obviously took hundreds of hours of work. So I can't imagine that this could have been done without the work of Lucy and Jake and his folks, and I thank you.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate that. Okay, so we circulated a draft of the regional agreement on the 22nd, which is what I hope is the final draft. And we had circulated on the 17th a draft that had some changes that DESE and legal had suggested we make. So you've had that agreement since September 17th. The only changes that were made in the draft circulated on the 22nd was that we added in the definitional section in section 16 some defined terms that had been defined earlier in the agreement, but just hadn't made it into that alphabetical list. So there's nothing new substantively at all in the draft circulated on 9/22. It's the same as the draft circulated on 9/17, except it adds that alphabetical, those alphabetical terms in section 16 that had been omitted from the draft circulated on the 17th. So just want to make sure people are clear on that. There's nothing new in the 9/22 draft. There might be a couple of formatting changes, but that's it. So what I'd like to do before I open the floor for discussion is walk through the changes in the September 17 draft from the draft we last reviewed on August 16th. And I think Jake's email on the 17th previewed for you that these changes again are clarifications that DESE asked for. There's one sort of teasing out of operating costs that DESE asked us to make, which I'll get to and describe for you when we get there. But there's nothing in here that changed in any material way the substance of what we looked at on the 16th of August. So just if you can follow along, I see Patrick has joined, Bonnie has joined. Has anyone else joined since I asked for roll call? No, okay. So on the title page, DESE asks that we include in the title the 8-town regional agreement, because that's also referenced in the Warren article. And so they thought it would be helpful to include 8-town regional agreement on the title page of the agreement itself. So then turning to page 6, obviously there's some citation changes to conform to the official record of how you're supposed to cite statutes in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm not going to go through those are pretty obvious. But on page 6, under 3B, DESE suggested we move that clause from the back of that sentence up into where you see it placed, just for clarity. Doesn't change the substance at all. On page 10, there's a clarification there in section 4F5. And this is the paragraph that addresses what happens if a district-owned school were to be closed. Right, and what this says is that if capital costs were incurred to construct or make any other improvements to the school building or property, and those costs were incurred by the district, and what's been added here just for clarification is the parenthetical, or as the case may be by the Berkshire Hills Regional School District or the Southern Berkshire Regional School District. Then if there's a sale of the building, the proceeds will be shared by those member towns who contributed to the cost of those improvements. So this is a concept that we talked about a long time back, agreed on a long time back. And all we did in these revisions is to clarify that this applies not just to the new district, but if there were improvements done to buildings by the old district, then the money would go back to the applicable member towns pro rata based on how much they contributed to the construction of those buildings. So again, this is just a clarification of a concept that we've had in the agreement for a long time. Page 11. Again, this is a DESI clarification that it's the district treasurer who certifies the budget and assessments to the chair of the select boards and the chair of the finance committees of each of the member towns, as opposed to the committee. It's the district treasurer who has that job. So that's the reason for the tweak on page 11. So then when we get to section 6, this is the issue that we previewed for you at the last meeting, that DESI thought it very important, first of all, that we separately address operating costs, transportation costs, and non-debt capital costs, rather than lumping them together as operating costs, as we had done in our illustration in prior iterations of this draft. So we have now teased that out. So that was number one request from DESI, that we tease those things out. Number two request from DESI is that we make it absolutely clear that there would be no way any town would be paying less than the required local contribution using our safety valve cap percentage increase approach. And we thought we had made that clear in a prior iteration of the draft, but they wanted it even clearer because, of course, the law requires that no town pay less than the required local contribution. So they wanted to be absolutely certain that our agreement said that and provided for that with no exceptions. And the third thing that they asked was that we provide that each of the member towns would be paying some portion of transportation costs and non-debt capital costs. So the bad news about all those requests is it made our agreement a little bit longer. We have 2 new defined terms and we have some new language in this section. The good news is it didn't change the economics of any of our projections. And it wouldn't change the economics of our projections because all of our towns are paying significantly above required local contribution now, and will likely be paying significantly above required local contribution into the future. So while there are more words here, the economics haven't changed. But I'll take you through the words so you understand them. So the first new defined term I want you to look at is on page 15. And it's the defined term total OTN town assessment. And OTN is an acronym that stands for operating costs, transportation costs, non-debt capital costs. That's the OTN. So total OTN town assessment means the total of the operating cost assessment, the transportation cost assessment, and the non-debt capital cost assessment for a member town in any given year. So it's just the sum of those 3: operating costs, transportation costs, and non-debt capital costs. So that's the first new defined term. And again, it reflects this teasing out of operating costs, transportation costs, and non-debt capital costs in our language and methodology. The second defined term I want to address is on page 13, and that's the minimum OTN town assessment, right? And so the minimum OTN town assessment means the required local contribution, which as we all know, every town has to pay the required local contribution. Their contribution cannot be below the RLC. So minimum OTN town assessment means required local contribution plus a town's transportation cost assessment and a town's non-debt capital cost assessment in any given year. And so those are the two new defined terms. Colin, I see you have your hand up. Do you want to jump in here or do you want to wait until I get through?
I can wait till you get to the end. We've already gone past my question, my part in the question. So keep going. We'll get it at the end.
I'm sorry. Okay. So those are the two new concepts here, right? These two new defined terms. Substantively, it's really no different from what we had before, but it creates these three buckets: operating costs, transportation costs, non-debt capital costs, and makes it very clear that no town, when we're applying the capped percentage increase, can go below the minimum OTN town assessment, the minimum of required local contribution, and the town's applicable share of transportation costs and non-debt capital costs. And all of the other changes in this section implement that concept. So all of the other red line that you're seeing in this section all relates to that principle that we're going to tease these things out, and there's going to be a minimum OTN town assessment. The most critical part of this markup is really on page 19 in the new language, that when we do those redistributions, when we're applying the cap percentage increase, the redistribution is going to come out of the amount above required local contribution for each of the respective towns. That's where the money will be adjusted out of if we have to make an adjustment. We're not going to do anything with required local contribution. That will stay the same. We're not going to do anything with the transportation cost assessment. We're not going to do anything with the non-debt capital cost assessment. We're going to make adjustments out of the amount above the required local contribution. All right, Colin, go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to go back to the part on the, I think it was on page 5 or 6 about the buildings.
Yeah.
So I believe, and I'm asking this question. I think I know the answer, but I'm asking this question for clarity because I know some of the critics of this decision have been jumping on it, and that is, it's in the agreement, basically, if the building, if let's say the high school in Sheffield were sold, the funds would go back to the original Southern Berkshire School District. Is that correct, what the agreement says? It
would go back to the member towns
right
of the original Southern Berkshire Regional School District, okay, pro rata, based on how much they paid of the cost of that debt. Yes, it would not go to any of the members of Berkshire Hills because they didn't contribute to the cost of that school. Now, if in 10 years, our new district invested another $5 million in that building, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the new member towns, the Berkshire Hills towns, contributed to the cost of that, and the building were sold 20 years later, then they would have contributed to those improvements and they would get a pro rata portion back based on whatever investment they made.
Okay, fair enough. The other part of that I wanted to make sure I understood is if the building wasn't sold, but it was leased in the interim, is the net funds from the let's say it's the high school is leased, repurposed and leased. Where are those funds going? Who gets those funds?
So when you lease property, you have to do what the law says you have to do. And that's chapter 71, section 16R. And so what happens when you lease property, we don't have any discretion here on how that works.
Right.
There's a statute that provides for how that works. And so in that case, we have to follow the statutory provision of chapter 71, section 16R, which provides that the money first goes into the cost of upkeep of that property. And then I believe it goes into E&D, any excess. Russell, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who's E&D? The new school district?
Yes, excess and
Okay.
efficiency.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I thank you. You clarified it. I wanted it said out loud. That's all, because I feel like some of the critics are suggesting that the school would be poof gone, and it's not. It goes back to the original member towns, or as you said, if it's used in by the new district, obviously, and they invest in it, there's going to be some stake in it for them too, if that's the case. Thank you.
All right. George?
Thank you, Lucy. Well, as one of the jumpers that Colin described, I do think, the E&D, it goes back into the coffers of the new district, not to the heritage district. And I think that's important. And I think another thing I would like clarified is the improvements made to any of the other buildings prior to the adoption of the proposed district agreement would not be included in any of the provisions that would subsequently apply.
That's incorrect.
Well, that's the question I'm asking.
Yeah. So if a building is sold, a district-owned building is sold, you would be looking back to the investment, the contributions that the applicable member towns made in that building to determine where the proceeds from that sale would go. So you would be looking back to figure out where proceeds from some future sale would go. And if one set of member towns made no investment in the improvements to that property, those towns would not get any share of the proceeds of any sale.
Thank you. You answered my question.
Thanks, George. Okay, page 20. Section 7B, You'll see a section of that was struck. That was Desi's suggestion. It's not necessary. It's not appropriate. All we need to say there is that debt may be incurred by the district if approved in accordance with the committee's chosen statutory method. So again, no substantive change there. Page 22. You'll see a reference to any local pension obligations. So this is a section, section 11B, that speaks to the obligations of member towns if they were to withdraw from the district. And so if a member town withdraws from the district, they will remain liable for liabilities incurred during all times in which the member town was a member of the district. And e.g. means, for example, OPEB for professional and non-professional staff, and any local pension obligations. And as it's been explained to me, and Russell, you can jump in here and probably explain it better than I, there are no district pension obligations for faculty. Those pension obligations are funded in another way for teachers and I believe superintendents. For paraprofessionals and other staff, I believe Peter Dillon told me that's funded through Berkshire Retirement, and there may be some local pension obligation with respect to that. Is that a fair summary, Russell? We lost Russell. Is Peter Dillon on?
Yeah, I think that's a fair summary.
Okay.
The teacher stuff is self-funded and the other groups are through the Berkshire County retirement system.
Okay. Page 25, that's just a language cleanup in paragraph 6. So substituted no sooner than the operational date as opposed to no sooner than the inception date or no sooner than inception. It's just a language cleanup. Page 27, we've got that same addition of any local pension obligation that I described before.
Lucy,
Yes.
sorry about that. I had
Oh, no
my
problem. Yeah.
physician was calling me in the middle, right when you were asking me the question.
Okay.
But yes, that is correct. MTRS covers the professional staff as far as the pension. So we would have just the county pension issues with the support staff, basically.
And MTRS is what?
Mass Teachers Retirement System.
Thank you. Okay. So page 28, Desi asked us to make explicit what I think was implicit here, that if the debt approval contingency is not satisfied, if there isn't a vote in favor of incurring the debt for the new high school by the designated date, the transition period shall end. This agreement shall terminate. The district shall dissolve, and Desi asked us to add, and the existing district shall continue in existence, which I think was already implied, but they thought it'd be clear if we added that in both paragraph C and paragraph D. And then the rest of the changes were really just adding the definitions. And again, all of these terms were earlier defined in the agreement. Desi just thought it would be useful to have an alphabetical listing of the definitions at the end. So we obliged and did that. And then in the illustrations, and Matt, you can speak to this if you like. We added some illustrations that show how that cap percentage increase would work with these three buckets that I described: operating costs, transportation costs, non-debt capital costs. And again, it doesn't change the projections that we've provided to the towns because all of the towns are so far above required local contribution, but we teased it out so that those who are charged with actually calculating these assessments have a recipe book, right? Have an illustration of how this works with the numbers that they will have year to year. So Matt, do you want to add anything to what you added to the Appendix B?
Yeah, I can just add some additional commentary, even though I do think you covered it very nicely.
For some reason, we can't hear you, or I can't hear you. Can others hear you?
Yes.
Uh-oh, hold on. I knocked out my microphone. Okay. I can hear you now.
Okay, we're good?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just saying, Lucy, that I'll add some additional commentary, but I think that you covered it very nicely. So I assume that members are familiar with the prior version of the illustration, which did not have this additional layering of the transportation costs and the non-debt capital costs broken out. So really the difference between the prior version and the version now before you is the addition of those two additional buckets as Lucy has been describing in her comments part of this evening. So the prior illustration had that data in there. It's just that it was combined into the total assessment at that point. Now we've broken them out. So you'll see a separate calculation just for the transportation piece. You'll see a separate calculation for the non-debt capital piece. And it all comes together to equal what we're calling that total OTN town assessment. But that total OTN town assessment is really the same number as what was shown in the prior version. So ultimately the numbers are the same as Lucy has described. There's just additional calculations that are taking place. And also, Lucy, is illustration B in there too, or just illustration A?
Illustration B is in there.
Okay, so illustration B, now we're not thinking that this scenario ever comes to be, but it is an example of the possibility that a town's, once the cap is in place, that a town's OTN assessment is less than the minimum. So it does walk, the example shows the process to then bring the town up to the minimum OTN assessment. So that is one additional piece that is now part of the appendix that wasn't there prior, just to show what that would look like if it were to happen. But again, we don't think that would.
And in order to illustrate that, you had to tell me if this is right. I think it was town F. You had to assume that town F's required local contribution in 1 year went up by 102%.
I forget the exact amount that it went up, but yes, we chose to take one town's required local contribution and inflate it tremendously compared to the prior year, just to make that calculation necessary. And there was one town that we chose to do that for, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And just reinforce, just so
Yeah.
everyone is crystal clear,
Yeah.
that the illustrations are not real numbers. They're illustration of a process. They're not any of the numbers that we've used in the calculations. So I just want to really underscore that no one should look at that and say, oh, which town is my town? that's not the case.
George and then Colin.
Thanks, Lucy. I just wanted to let the chair be aware that this connection is has been from the beginning a bit unstable, and I know you've had trouble hearing from time to time as well. And apparently,
I only had trouble hearing
Well,
George because
excuse me.
I pulled my microphone out of the
Okay,
socket.
well,
I haven't had any trouble hearing
I was
otherwise.
also attempting to say that I'm aware of at least one member of our planning board who has been unable to log on, and perhaps Amanda can do something about that.
Has anyone else had any difficulty getting on this evening or hearing this evening?
No,
Nadine?
I'm having unstable internet. So I've dialed in so that I can hear on my phone.
Okay, is that a Sheffield problem or a home problem?
No, it is not a Sheffield problem. It's a problem, Lucy. That's what I was attempting to say.
Yeah, who's having trouble getting on currently?
I'm having trouble staying on.
Mr. Burkle is having trouble getting on.
Okay, well, he can call in if he'd like.
He's in the attendees or in the panelists now. Has been for a while. I'm not sure if there is an audio issue or what, but he joined quite some time ago.
Is he in attendees or in panelists,
In the
Amanda?
panelists.
Why don't we ask him if he's having trouble?
I'm not seeing his name here, Amanda. Am I looking at the wrong? Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah, I see him as a panelist, George. He's on. But if he can't get audio, he can call in. Colin?
I was going to go back to the illustrations in the regional agreement and just say my initial reaction was I can see people reacting to this and looking at it and taking them as real numbers. I do want to say out loud that I do see the words illustration and example in them, but I also worry that, you know, without a giant disclosure, people are going to take these to mean, oh, the school's going to cost 10 million. That's not real, and or whatever it is, 100 million. That's not real. So I don't know if there's anything we can do about it at this point, but I do see that it says example and illustration. So.
Well, we could put right under illustration of operating transportation and non-debt capital cost assessment methodology. We could put in bold letters, these are illustrative only and do not represent actual assessment numbers. Would that be helpful?
That would be great if it was that black and white. I am a black and white person.
Okay.
Thank you.
That would be very easy to do. Bonnie?
Are you taking general questions now? Because I don't know exactly which section they go in.
I think we're done with my walking through the changes from the last draft, so yes.
Okay. All right. So the first is a real simple one. It actually is in the first paragraph of section 15. Effective date of agreement. This agreement shall take effect upon the approval by a majority of voters. Can you add in each of the towns?
I mean, this agreement, Bonnie,
Mm,
has been approved with this language by DESI. We have an official email of approval for this language. And unless unless someone has a substantive objection to some provision in here,
That's not a
and
sub. Mine
yeah,
is
and a
not.
majority of the board
Okay,
agrees with
all
it.
right. I
I'm
got you.
just very nervous about fiddling with language that DESI has signed off on.
It just seems that it's, all right, the way all right, so here are my other ones. And maybe you could tell me.
Bonnie, are you referring to section 15A,
Yes,
effective date of agreement? It actually spells out each town and says held in each town. It names the towns. How
I
more
know that.
specific were you looking?
I was looking that upon approval of majority of voters, the towns of, could be the majority of voters because Great Barrington has 2,000, people more. So I wanted it to be clear that each of the towns.
It does say that at the very end, held
Says
in
held.
each town. And
It's held in each.
okay, I'm reading it the way that you want it to be. I'm interpreting
Right.
it that way, so I think it's there. So anyway, I just wanted clarification.
I think it's not. Okay, then here are my other questions. Is there, because I don't know what the relationship is in terms of any financial obligations.
Let me just back
Sure.
up there, Bonnie,
Yeah.
on 5A. This agreement shall take effect upon approval by a majority of voters. I do think it's missing a word. Of the
Yes.
towns of Alford, Egremont, Great Barrington, Monterey, New Marlborough, Sheffield, Stockbridge, and West Stockbridge at town meetings held in each town and approval by the commissioner. So I would suggest we supply the missing word of there. I didn't see that before. But otherwise, I agree with Colin that it's crystal clear. It's crystal clear in the Warren article. It's crystal clear in the summary of the Warren article. And I don't think there could be any question, but that for an 8-member town agreement to be approved, you need agreement from a majority of the voters in each of the 8 towns.
Yes, you just said in each of the 8 towns. and
Yeah,
that's-
I think that's exactly what that says.
No, it doesn't. It's set, but I'm not gonna, you're gonna win, so it doesn't matter. All it says now is that there will be a meeting in each of the towns. If Great Barrington or Sheffield votes one way and has a plurality, it could override what Egremont and Monterey, and that's why I'm saying it, if Monterey votes yes, and Sheffield votes no, if you're taking a grouping, what we mean is if Monterey votes yes, that is one of the 8 towns voting yes. It doesn't matter if 70 people or 700 people vote. That's the clarity I want. Not going to change it. I made my point on that.
I think
But-
it's clear in the Warren article, and this agreement has no effect. It's irrelevant what's in this agreement until there is a vote in each of the 8 towns and a majority in each of the 8
Okay.
towns say yes.
All right, so let me go to the, I don't know the answers here at all. What obligation, what involvement, et cetera, does it have to do, is there with the Richmond School, Farmington River, and the offices of Berkshire Hills and Stockbridge? I don't know whether they have, what the agreements are, and does it impact anything in our regional agreement?
I guess I'm not sure on the question, but Peter Dillon, if you understand the question.
I think so. So Bonnie, what I think you're asking is the Berkshire Hills district has some previous commitments to
Correct.
to these other places. My assumption would be, and I'm not an attorney, though occasionally I dabble in pretending to be one. My assumption would be that if the new region is formed, that the agreements with the previous entity would at some point cease to exist when the previous entities, and it could be Berkshire Hills or Southern Berkshire, if it was approved, the transition districts formed, then there would be a time when existing agreements would be brought to closure in advance of the new thing. The Berkshire Hills has tuition agreements with Richmond and Farmington River. I think Southern Berkshire has a tuition agreement with, and correct me on this, do they have one with Farmington River as well, or
No.
not? Okay, so you don't. Berkshire Hills has a lease agreement with the town of Stockbridge for the space in the town hall, and I imagine if we move forward on this, the transition committee will have discussions about where administrative space would be going forward.
Okay, you answered most of it. I just don't, are there any financial obligations with your agreements that the new district would be taking on in terms of Farmington River and Richmond?
No financial ones except the tuition agreement, right? So, but that would be revisited. They also both sunset, but I think the if this were to go forward, the dissolution of the districts and the formation of the new district would probably take care of that.
Okay, thank you. You answered those questions. And then my last one, we talk about all the protections in terms of the elementary and the middle school, but nowhere in here does it talk about Mount Everett operating completely the way it is until the new high school is opened. And there's that phrase that exists for the younger grades of the school closest to them. So my question is, how is, since I haven't found it, it's very easily true that I missed it. How is Mount Everett and its programs protected until the new high school opens?
Well, until July 1, 2026, which is when we think the new district would be operational, assuming we get that extension of the transition period, the existing districts continue as they are, and students continue to attend the schools in those districts. I guess your question is, if the new high school is not finished by July 1, 2026, will the kids in, for example, Alford, who will be much closer to Monument than Mount Everett, go to Monument? Is that your question?
It does the regional agreement address that question for this whole transition period, assuming the votes
No, for the transition period, it absolutely addresses it, right? So during the transition period, the two existing districts continue to operate and have control over where their students go to school. So during the transition period, it absolutely addresses it.
Okay. All right. So that they still say, if they choose to, at Mount Everett. Unless they use school.
The only way kids in the Southern Berkshire could go to monument during the transition period would be if they've already choiced in or they choice in during the transition period and they're accepted. That's the only way they could go to monument.
All right, you answered my question. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, just to leave open one possibility, they could choice in during the transition period. They might also be able to tuition into a vocational program.
Yeah. Good correction there. Yep.
And the same way the Berkshire Hills could choice into our district. All right, so that remains in place. Thank
Right.
you.
Okay. We're at 5:50. I don't see any more hands up. We do have some need to move this forward. So if there are no more questions about the agreement, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agreement with the draft date of 9.
I'll make a motion.
Let me just finish 9/22/23
Yep.
with the addition of that word of, I think, in section 15A. And the bold heading, that Colin suggested in Appendix B to make it clear that these are illustrations only.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, Nadine, I saw your hand was up, so Marie will make the motion, and if it's okay with you, Deb, I'll have Nadine second.
That's fine with me.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion before we move to a vote? Okay, I don't see any hands, so let's go to a vote. Charlie,
Yes.
Carl, George,
No.
Tom Burkle, Jim,
No.
Deb,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
John Silbert,
Yes.
Kim,
No.
Susan,
Yes.
Tara,
Yes.
Nancy. Nancy,
No.
Colin,
Yes.
Nadine,
Yes.
Bonnie,
No.
Michael,
Yes.
Patrick, Patrick,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Marie,
Yes.
Andy, Sarah,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, so the motion carries. We have an agreement.
Can you just say the total?
Listen to the total, Karen.
Yeah,
The total, please.
Oh, come on.
somebody needs to mute. Charlie, I think we need to mute you.
Lucy, can you give the total, please?
I'm adding it up,
Oh, okay.
Bonnie.
I have 16 yeses, 5 nos,
16-5, yep.
and then 3 who didn't respond.
Okay,
And number of absence, please.
It's 21, 24. That's what our board is. So 16-5 is 21, 3 is 24. That's the board. So there were 3 people who didn't respond.
Can you check to see if it's a connectivity problem for the 3? Not that it would make a difference in the total, but just it's such an important vote.
Well, the 3 that didn't respond are muted.
Oh, can we unmute them?
Well,
I-
they can.
I did request to unmute Mr. Burkle, and I reached out to him by email to see if I could offer assistance.
Marie,
Is Andy Potter, and he is not on the meeting. He's going to another meeting. So
Yeah.
that's why he's not there. He's not having any technical issues. Just
He
so you
uses
know.
Otter.
Right, exactly.
okay, let's move forward with the recommendation report. We already voted to recommend merger, but you now have a report in front of you that would be forwarded with the recommendation to the select boards. Jake, were you able to send
Yep,
the
everyone.
version with my conclusion? Okay, so
everyone.
I wrote a conclusion to this report that I didn't circulate beforehand because I was mindful of our open meeting law requirements. And so it was sent to you right at the beginning of this meeting, and I'm just going to read it for you, for those who don't have it or haven't had a chance to review it. So this is the conclusion to the report. The first K-12 regional school in the Commonwealth was formed right here in Southern Berkshire over 70 years ago. It was the Southern Berkshire Regional School District. After arriving at the conclusion that the town should join to form that new district, their planning board wrote, quote, "The board has thoroughly investigated all phases of our school problem and gave careful thought to all possible solutions. It is the considered opinion of all who had the privilege of working on this project that the advantages which would come not only to our children, but to all the residents of the communities under such a program would far surpass those we might expect from any other type of solution." Close quote. While much has changed since the 1950s, what motivated that planning board to make their bold recommendation was the desire to do what was best for the kids. The path they recommended carried some risk, but the risks of remaining separate were greater. We are at that same crossroads. We too have conducted a thorough investigation of all possible solutions to the challenges our two districts face. One of the most critical being the narrowing of choices for our children: academic, extracurricular, vocational, and friendships. These are foundational building blocks of our children's education, and they are lessening and limited by our very small and consistently shrinking grade sizes, particularly in high school. Combining our districts changes that trajectory. And similarly to that first planning board, we see that the educational and financial advantages that would come from combining our districts would well surpass what we might expect from any other solution. Change is always hard, but change is coming, whether or not we combine. Our schools are simply too small, and they are getting smaller. By joining, we will be much better positioned with more resources and a broader community to give our kids the education, support, and choices they need and deserve. Let's again make the right choice for our kids and for many generations to come. So that's the conclusion that I drafted to our report. The report itself is really a combination of materials already posted on our website. There's no new content in there. Really, the only thing that is new is the conclusion that I wrote. And much of that is actually drawn from the historical report that Rob Putnam prepared for us, and we all read probably 2 years ago now, Jake. That's about right. So discussion on the recommendation report. George.
Thank you, Lucy. I think your conclusion is very eloquent. And as you and I know several members of our planning board know, I spent many of my professional years in a country that specialized in revisionist history. And when you mention the Southern Berkshire Planning Board, that was in the early 50s that recommendation was made. And in 1948, there were actually 8 towns, the same 8 towns that are deliberating here this evening, that began discussions of the first district, regional district, school committee and board in the Commonwealth. And that's an issue that these 8 towns have revisited pretty much every 20 years. And so here we are, pretty much on schedule. And after 3.5 years of, I think, honest and insightful discussion at a juncture where we were in 1948 and where we were in the early 50s. So a little perspective, I think, is in order. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Any more comments on the report? Don?
I move approval as written.
Nadine? There's been a motion to approve the report as written with a second by Nadine. Any further discussion? Don? You still have your hand up. Do you want to?
I'm sorry.
Do your motion?
That's my motion. Thank you, Nadine, for the second. I'm ready to vote.
Okay. Voting on the motion to accept the recommendation report as written. Charlie?
Yes.
Carl?
Carl's muted.
Carl?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Tom Burkle. Tom. Jim,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Don,
Yes. Yes.
John,
Yeah.
Kim. Kim, Susan,
Yes.
Tara,
Yes.
Nancy,
Abstain, I'm still going through it, sorry.
Colin,
Yes.
Nadine. Nadine.
Yes.
Bonnie.
Yes.
Thank you. Bonnie,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes. Yes.
Marie,
Yes.
Andy.
Bill has no vote.
Andy's not here, right? Okay. Sarah,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
Who has no vote?
Bill Conti.
Lucy, can you hear me? Because I was muted,
Yeah.
but I voted yes.
Yes, I got your yes vote.
Okay, thank you.
Jake, do you have the tally on that?
I didn't tally out one. I don't think we had any no's, right? I think we had one abstention.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm. I didn't get a total yes, though. Amanda?
I think it's 20 yes.
Yep.
1 abstention.
Thank you.
Okay. Congratulations, everyone. All right, so I did want to say a few words about the proposed warrant article. And the target date for a vote. So 6 of the 8 towns have confirmed that they will be scheduling the special town meeting for October 23rd. Our hope and strong recommendation to the other 2 towns is that they too will schedule their special town meeting for October 23rd, or at least not before October 23rd. I think Bonnie agrees with me. She at least told me that in a call, that it's important that we have this vote on the same night. So all voters can feel enfranchised to take the vote and voice their decision sort of on a clean slate. So the 2 towns that have yet to decide on October 23rd, as far as I know, Jake, are Monterey and Egremont. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
They
And
both
all other 6 towns have agreed to schedule their special town meetings for October 23rd. So those of our planning board members from Egremont and Monterey, please encourage your respective select boards to schedule your special town meeting on the same date as the other 6 towns. The warrant article that has been distributed to town council for all 8 towns was circulated to you, I believe, on the 19th. We've got a couple of, small language changes that town council from Great Barrington, I think, suggested. They're fine. We're waiting to hear from others, but I don't expect it's gonna look very much different from what you have received from Jake. And then the special legislation we just sent to you for informational purposes. You know, how exactly that reads is going to be up to the sponsor of this legislation. But the three sections 1, 2, and 3 in the special legislation, sort of the meat of what we're asking the legislature to do. And that won't be sent out until and unless the towns vote to approve the proposed regional agreement and form the new district. So any questions on either the warrant or the special legislation? Okay, Jake, community forums and outreach.
Sure.
Oh, George has his hand up. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Lucy. Very quick question. When can the towns expect to receive official notification of the votes taken this evening? I asked that just so we know when the 30 days starts clicking in.
Right. So obviously it's September 26th, and we're hoping that all the special town meetings will be on October 23rd. I expect we'll forward the recommendation as soon as we can make those 2 little tweaks to the regional agreement and send it off. So I would expect it would be this week. I thought you were going to ask me, when are we going to have the final version of the Warren article? And I'm unfortunately a little bit dependent on hearing back from town council in order to send that out. But again, I would expect that we'd have it out by the end of this week, because it needs to be posted at least 14 days prior to the special town meeting. And we need to give our respective towns a little bit of wiggle room there. So we really do need to get the Warren article finalized and out to the towns ASAP.
Thanks. You anticipated my next question.
Yeah, that's critical that we get that wrapped up. And I guess I'm going to assume, if I don't hear from one town council, that they're okay with the version that we've circulated. I have heard from 3 or 4, I think. Okay, any other? Yeah, go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, so just I think we were on the topic of community outreach, and so just thanks to the community outreach subcommittee for all the work they've been doing. They've been meeting either every 2 weeks, and I think we're meeting this week, which would be every week, to continue to work on outreach efforts and materials in advance of the town meeting. So on the calendar right now, we have tomorrow night we'll be at Mount Everett. Southern Berkshire is hosting a superintendent conversations on the regional agreement. So we will be there. October 2nd, we're doing a radio show at 9 in the morning, and then we're at Stockbridge with their finance subcommittee that evening. The 3rd is Kiwanis. The 4th, we have the Berkshire Eagle Forum, which is the Mahawi. We think that that's going to be one of the sort of marquee events hosted by Berkshire Eagle. We've mentioned this prior. Please register and submit your questions, or encourage people to. The 10th, we're at West Stockbridge. The 11th at the Rotary, I guess at noon. On the 11th in the evening, we'll have a community forum. We are hosting 2 community forums. one on the 11th at Mount Everett, and one on the 18th at Monument. And I think tentatively we're scheduled for Alfred on October 14th. So that's maybe 8 or 10 different outreach meetings right now. We certainly could be asked by other towns, I would imagine, but that's where we stand at the moment, pretty heavily booked. We're putting together what a yes vote, what a no vote means. We have basically wrapped that up. That'll be printed tomorrow and be distributed for the first time at tomorrow's event. And I would say that that will be a very useful document to the board members as they reach out to their own networks and talk to people about what this vote is all about. We've tried to simplify it and distill down what a yes vote, no vote mean in the various sort of categories or topic areas. A lot of social media going on right now, and I appreciate Stacy and Christina who are doing a lot of push out on that. So, yep. So I encourage folks to come out to those events to support, to lend your voice when the time is appropriate, and appreciate your ongoing support. It's going to be a busy few weeks.
Bonnie?
Yes, thank you. If you remember, our school committee asked for a financial presentation for our communities no less than 30 days before the vote. Will that be part of what you will do on the 11th, so we cover both issues and there isn't a need for another meeting?
Is that a question to me?
You and Lucy.
I follow direction. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, when we went to Monterey, the request was to come to the select board, but there were very targeted questions that we were provided with ahead of that meeting that were pertained to finance. And so while we talked generally to the work and the recommendation, we did tailor much of the content towards those particular questions that were asked. I think in the general presentation, which we're putting together, Bonnie, there will be certainly a very brief overview of finance. I guess the question is how far sort of into the details are you all looking to go? Because I'm not sure that that's completely appropriate for a broad community forum. So,
Look, what happened?
Yeah.
Hello? You still there?
We're here, Bonnie.
Okay. Oh, there you are, Lucy. The motion that we passed was more than just the very short, brief one. It was more of, instead of 35,000 feet, more like the 15,000 foot overview of the finances and the way they'll work in the new district.
Mm-hmm.
And the impact. So I don't expect you to go, super detailed, but also that it would enable people to ask questions.
Well, I think what Jake's saying, and I agree with it, is that, we've heard over and over again at these community forums that people want the opportunity to speak and have their specific questions answered. And I think that's appropriate and useful. If we were to do a detailed overview or a detailed description of the assessment methodologies, that takes an hour. And it's on our website right now. Anyone can listen to it. Jake gave that 1 hour overview at one of our board meetings. So I think it would be really helpful, Bonnie, if the school committee has specific questions that they would like addressed, they do what Monterey did, which is send them to us. And then we will be able and prepared to address those specific questions rather than taking up 50% of the community forum time with doing the same overview we did to this board several months ago. So I think that would be our request back to the school committee.
Okay, just thought it would save having an extra meeting if you.
Well, we're not gonna have another meeting. We don't have time booked. You haven't sent us a request for another meeting, and I'm not sure another meeting to go over what's already been addressed many times, including at the planning board level, and it's recorded, is an efficient use of anybody's time.
If you would give me just an email back stating that, so I could use it, I could have the school committee be aware of that, because they unanimously passed the motion to have a finance meeting for our 5 towns.
Yeah, that was back in May, right? That was back in May. So there's been a lot of presentations.
Lucy, it was, sorry to interrupt. It was way more recent.
Yes.
Well, we were not, you didn't send us a letter. You didn't make us aware of that vote. I happened to be at a meeting in May when you took that vote, May or June, I can't remember. But there's been a lot of presentations since. And, you know, your members of your school committee, including the 5 members, 50% of your school committee who are members of this planning board have been in all of our meetings, all of our planning board meetings where we've discussed how the assessment methodologies work. So I want to be clear. I'm not saying that we're not going to discuss assessment methodologies when we go to the community forum on the 11th. But what I'm suggesting is it would be much more efficient and productive if your school committee could send us the specific questions they have so we can be sure to address those and do it in an efficient way.
Well, it's not only, we're speaking on behalf of our 5 towns. So that was the request, that was the motion. And what you're basically saying is there will not be a separate finance meeting or a more in-depth. It was just, we were so impressed with the reporting out of the finance subcommittee. We felt that our towns needed to hear more in depth about what the impact was.
My response is the one I just gave you, Bonnie, which is we've got October 11th booked. We don't have another date booked. You haven't suggested another date for us. We have October 11th booked, and we will be prepared on that day to answer whatever questions come to us before then, whether directly from your school committee or from members of the public. And if you have another plan in mind, I again encourage you to do what I've been encouraging for the last 6 months, which is come to community outreach, make a suggestion, and let us talk it through and compare our calendars and see if it's possible. Now, that's what I asked be done with the meeting on the regional agreement. Your school committee declined to allow us to make a presentation at tomorrow night's meeting. I think that's a mistake, but it's your call. On the finances, we're prepared to answer whatever questions you have at the meetings we have scheduled. And if you really feel you need another meeting, and we can find a day that works for Jake's calendar and mine, which is already incredibly booked in October on this work, we'll try and make it work.
Thank you.
But you need to work with us on scheduling and not just announce to us that you want us at some meeting on some date that may not be doable.
Well, we did forward with, and the 30 days now kicks off as of today. So, okay, we've got it set.
Okay,
The only other comment I'll offer is that it's important also, depending on whether there's going to be a focus in a particular meeting, for me to have Matt and or Russell
Mm,
present. And I need to be, respectful of their time, but also cautious about having them at meetings that we don't necessarily need them at. And because Matt
will
offers
let
a
you
level
know.
of expertise on the finance
Right.
on some of the nuances that I can answer probably 90%, but I need Matt for that final 10%. So it's just important. Like, I feel at the community forum, we can probably manage a lot of that, but if it's going to be very technical questions, and keep in mind that a good chunk of our days right now are answering questions. We're getting a lot of email traffic and some, phone inquiries, and we're responding to everything. And some of that does require that I reach out to Matt and or Russell to say, hey, can you check in on this, or just make sure that this answer is, aligns with your interpretation of how we did the modeling or whatever. So
And it
just
could,
keep that in mind too.
it could be that with the public forums that have taken place and the subsequent school committee meetings, that there are fewer questions that will come from the school committee. So I will get back to you on that.
thank you.
Hey, Lucy, we have an honor was to be part of this committee. Thanks.
Thanks, Patrick.
Bye, Patrick. Thank you. Nancy?
Prosaic question. One thing I want to thank you guys too. I think you've done for whether I am whether I approve the merger agreement or not. You guys have busted your tail to do a very well crafted agreement. So thank you for the efforts that you put in. But really what I'm asking about is so prosaic. Jake, could you make sure to send out a calendar with all the dates of all the meetings?
Sure. Yeah. I'll yeah, it's good. It's moving. A lot of this stuff is a moving target, and Stacy is helping me to sort of keep tabs on it all. But I will send the board an email, because I have a slide up on my screen right now with all the events, and that'll at least lay out in very general terms. You'll see that on the website now, we're beginning to put tiles up that look a little different, and they represent events. And so you'll see that I think the Berkshire Eagle Forum is up there. But I'm not sure we're going to put things like Kiwanis and Rotary up, but I'll make sure that you all know that those things are happening.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm asking. Great. Thank you very much. Like I said, way prosaic. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Nancy. Colin?
Yeah, if I may just make a couple comments and a comment and a couple requests. I just wanted to thank the Community Outreach Committee for putting together all these different meetings. And I do think it's important. I worry about the one at the Mahawi because it'll be such a big one and could be difficult because there'll be so many questions, but we'll see what happens. I've also been paying attention to conversation in social media. And I guess my comment that I'm going to make is I'm trying to commit myself to not sway people's opinion one way or the other. I want people to educate themselves. That's the biggest thing. So I keep in my conversations, my real conversations, not in social media, but in real conversations, I keep pointing people to our website. And that goes to what Lucy was saying to you, Bonnie, is that a lot of the information that we have for people is there to read. And then obviously there's follow-up questions that people have, and hopefully people will come to the meetings educated. But my ask is all of us on this committee, if we could do the same thing and direct people to that website and remind people in the next couple of weeks as we get to the point where we vote. My last ask is the conversations that are happening in social media that I have seen. Some of them have really upset me. Jake was attacked in one and harassed. And so much so that I wrote him an email and said, I'm sorry that happened to you. I appreciate the work that you're doing. Jake is, our consultant. He's not there, he's not the enemy. and some of us are participating in those social media conversations. And I would hope that we would perhaps squash that conversation, not what people are saying. You know, it's okay to disagree. I'm okay with those of you who disagree with my opinion. I appreciate the disagreement, actually, but I don't appreciate it when Jake is attacked, when Peter Dillon's called out, when Nadine's called out. Those aren't. I don't think that's appropriate. So when we're all participating in these conversations in social media, I think it's appropriate to stop that's coming from other people. I'm not saying that we're doing it, but we're participating in those conversations. So if we can keep it professional and respectful, I'd really love to see that happen. Obviously in real life too, when we're doing that and having the face-to-face conversation. So thank you for listening to me rant.
No, that wasn't a rant at all, Colin, and I really appreciate your saying that. And I'd like to echo it, and particularly attacks on our consultants, our superintendents, any of us actually, is inappropriate, unprofessional, and really sort of so contrary to the reason we all came together 4 years ago to do this work. Fine to have disagreements as to what the best path forward is, but not fine to attack each other. And I echo your sentiments. Bill, you had your hand up?
Not anymore.
Okay. All right. So
Lucy, one more thing. I just want to clarify. I wasn't suggesting any of us were attacking each other, but in the conversations that we are participating in social media, you know, someone else other than on this committee, you know, was harassing Jake. And if we see that, I hope we could call that out and stop it. That's all I was pointing out. So.
okay, thanks for that clarification. I'm not a social media person, so I haven't been following it.
Lucky you.
Yeah, it's a choice. All right. We have approval of minutes. Amanda, I have to admit that I am forgetting whether we already distributed the July 18 minutes prior to the last meeting.
The July 18th, I just sent out this morning. I've been a little under the weather, so I apologize, everyone, but I did send those out if anyone had a chance to look them over.
All right, well, let's table that then for our next meeting, because folks are tired and they probably haven't had a chance to review them yet. So that brings us to closing effort. So we've made our recommendation. We've approved the proposed regional agreement. Our work really, the work of this full board is really done at this point, at least until after the vote. So the question I have for the board is, do you want to schedule another meeting before October 23? Or do you want to allow community outreach to do its work and not schedule a board meeting until after the vote? So I just put that out there for the group to discuss. Marie?
Okay, I'll just say my 2 cents. We all have way too many meetings between now and then. And I don't see, if we have nothing more to vote on in between now and then, except for minutes, I don't see why we can't wait till after the town's meeting on the vote.
Okay.
If that's a motion, I'll second it.
Sure, I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, discussion, Bonnie?
I would just have one caveat. If for some reason, Lucy, if something comes up and you feel we need to meet, that would be the only caveat. So wait till afterwards, unless the chair determines there is a need to have a meeting of the full board.
Marie, would you be
Yes, I'll
amenable to
amend,
that?
yep, yep, I amend it to add that caveat.
Okay, George, is that okay with you?
Yes, it is.
Okay, any more discussion? All right, let's take a vote on that motion. Charlie,
Yes.
Carl,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Steve. Steve had to go to the other meeting. Don? Don? Is Don muted, Amanda?
No. It shows he's unmuted.
Oh, you voted yes, thank you. John?
Yeah.
Kim?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Tara?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Colin?
Yes.
Nadine?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Michael? He had to go to the meeting. Patrick had to go
Yes.
to the meeting. Oh, Michael's here, great. Bill?
Yes.
Marie?
Yes.
And Sarah?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, so that's unanimous. So public comments. Any public comments? Justin,
I'm promoting Justin. Justin, if you unmute, you're on.
Hello.
hi, Justin.
Hi, Lucy. I just wanted to ask a question about the timing of special town meetings.
Sure.
So, as was said earlier, Monterey is one of the two towns that hasn't set a special town meeting for Monday, October 23rd. I was just curious what times other towns are setting in their special town meeting for, because I think the same concerns that would result from them town meeting on different days could result from them being at different times.
Where'd it go?
I imagine with all of the cell phone use of today, people will hear and talk about at the meetings how other towns voted, even if only 10 minutes or an hour prior. So I think, holding a special town meeting and then someone standing up and saying, well, Vermont and West Stockbridge just voted this way, is going to be something that we're going to be all dealing with if the town meetings are all at the same time. And it seems like it has the same undesired effect as holding town meetings on different days, maybe even worse, because voters are trying to think on their feet about how it matters that these other towns have already voted. So I just didn't know if you, Lucy, towns are holding their meeting.
Sorry, Justin, but I only got about 50% of that. Jake, did you get most of it?
Yeah, Lucy, Justin, he emailed me too, and I think he said something, email contained a lot of what he just said to the board as part of the comments, and that was in effect, what's the difference between, I think his general question, what's the timing of the votes for the towns on the 23rd? And is it as problematic to have a town having a vote at, let's say, 5 PM and another one doing it at 7, and the results of that town, being circulated in social media or using technology and influencing or, impacting the vote of another town
Yeah.
versus, having it on the Friday or Saturday before the Monday, right? As I think is one of the options for Monterey, which is the 21st.
Yeah, well, my personal opinion is no, it's not as problematic. I mean, is there a possibility that there'll be some phone traffic? Yeah, I guess so, but there's not going to be any press reporting until that night or the following day. And I think it's important that we all vote on the same day. I mean, I guess we could ask towns to hold official reporting of the results until sometime in the evening. But I think having it all on the same day is much better than having some towns, particularly the smaller towns, go first. So that would be my suggestion. John?
Yeah, I think there are two issues, but I just want to make sure Justin can hear us. Justin, are you able to hear us at this point? Because you're not always clear.
Yeah, I've been able to hear
Okay.
you now and throughout
Great.
the whole meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. So there are two issues here. One is the narrow issue of do all the towns have have the meetings at the same time as well as the same day? And of course, I would encourage that. I think that's once we get to the same day, we may as well try and get to the same time. I think the second part that Justin is asking is, I would answer that by just reminding everyone that there's a difference between the perfect way to do this and the best way to do this. And while it's true that people might be making phone calls between towns in the middle of their meetings, this is really the best we can do. The best we can do is hold 8 meetings at the same date on the same time. And I don't think we should discourage that best case scenario because it's not perfect. So I would really encourage all 8 towns to hold the meetings at the same day, at the same time, and have a little bit of confidence that even if there is a phone call or two in any given audience, that people are not suddenly going to give up the ghost because they hear of an outcome in another town, one way or the other, by the way. So I would hope that we as responsible town leaders can give our voters the best possible chance to consider this at the same time and vote at the same time. And that's as much as we can be expected to do.
Thanks, John. Bonnie?
I want to second what John said, and at least if we send out a recommendation that all meetings take place at 7 o'clock on that date. I'm not worried about the press. It's the people who will call, email, etc. That's how it will be spread instantly. We can't do anything about that except for the fact if you hold it at Mount Everett, you will not have any service. So you will not be able to with other towns.
Wait, Bonnie has just given us a solution.
Turn off all service.
No phones at town meetings.
Right. So I think I go back to what Lucy referred to earlier. In terms of democracy, we all vote on the same day in our national elections, our congressional, etc. The most chance for us to know the tenor of our communities is for everyone to be voting on the same day at the same time. And after all of this work, which I second the amount of work that has gone into this, particularly Lucy and Jake, I may not agree with the outcomes, but to have this not destroyed, but in any way diminished by having people voting on all different days would be a shame. That's it.
Thank you, Bonnie. Marie?
I just have 2 things. If there are towns that have not set their time, I will let you know that Great Barrington and West Stockbridge have set theirs for 6 o'clock. And second of all, it doesn't mean everybody's going to vote at the same time, because when you have the larger towns like Sheffield and Great Barrington, there's going to be a lot of conversation, and they might not end up voting until 8 or 9 o'clock at night, where the other smaller towns might be done a lot earlier.
True.
But also in Great Barrington, there's not good service in that auditorium either. So, but I just wanted to make note, if you haven't set your time, if you want to try to do it at the same time, Great Barrington and West Stockbridge already set it at 6 o'clock. So, that's all.
Thanks, Marie.
Thank you.
Charlie, and then Colin, and then Nadine.
Thanks, Lucy. What I'm saying is that all they have to do is read the town warrant and the motion from there, I don't believe that there'll be any discussion at any town meeting. I mean, there'd be just a vote. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, there will be an opportunity for discussion. Certainly, there needs to be a motion to adopt the article, and then a second, and then, as in any town meeting, there likely is going to be discussion.
Okay.
Yeah. What did I say? Colin and then Nadine? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Lucy. I actually thought of what Justin was asking. So, and I was going to bring it up earlier, but I thought, oh no, I don't want. But I think it goes to what I was saying earlier. I was asking that we all get out there and ask people to educate themselves. So, if the majority of people at town meeting are educated, they've educated themselves, they've read it, they've had discussions around the dinner table, they've read the stuff on our website, they've asked questions. It doesn't matter what text they get, they will have made up their minds when they show up to meeting. I know that's not necessarily what's going to happen. That's ideal. There are going to be people at the meeting that have no idea what's going on, and they're going to be swayed by everything that's said at meetings. So, but it's all the more reason for us to get out in our communities and in our individual towns, rather, and talk to people and participate in these meetings that are coming up, and make sure everybody, is getting the correct, the factual information.
Nadine?
I just wanted to say that Sheffield scheduled their meeting for 6 p.m.
Oh, good. Got 3 at 6.
You got New Marlboro too.
Oh, 4 at 6. Great. Peter?
Just wanted to follow up on Colin's point. I was in a discussion with a longtime community leader in Stockbridge about this on Saturday, and an observation that he and his wife had is that getting information to people is really important, and getting people out to forums can be difficult. Getting people to get to websites can be difficult. So their idea or recommendation was that we send a direct mail piece to all registered voters. Perhaps it's with the yes/no document, but something that guarantees that at least everyone who's eligible to vote has had access to the information. I took the idea to heart because I know that we've used that tactic in the past to make sure that everybody is notified about, I believe, the survey earlier. So I raised that just because it was a tag along to the comments raised earlier in terms of just encouragement and facilitation of voters getting the information they need to make an educated vote on this.
Yeah. And Community Outreach Subcommittee talked about that, and certainly on our wish list, but we don't have the funds to do it. And so in order to do a direct mail piece, we'd have to find those funds, and they're not insignificant. So we can keep talking about that, Peter. But currently we're running on Ether, right, Jake?
We're actually, the bottle is empty of ether. There's nothing left. It's just air.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. Thank
Yeah.
you for hearing me out.
Warren.
Justin has his hand back up.
A few small comments. Just one, I think if we do hold it on the Monday, which increasingly convinced of, and thank you, especially John and Bonnie, for your comments on that. It will probably be at 6 p.m. just because even though we're a small town, we do tend to have long discussions on things. And then the other thing is that by our bylaws, we're required to mail out all warrants. And one of the things that we've been wondering is whether we'll include the whole school district agreement in the warrant itself, or just, it seems like the warrant article refers people to the website and to the town clerk's office in each respective town. But I was just curious if other towns are planning on including the entire school district agreement in their warrant.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, Justin.
Justin, Sheffield is not going to be including the whole regional agreement. It's referred to in the warrant.
It's certainly not typical. I mean, I remember at the last meeting we had where there was an amendment to the regional agreement, the Southern Berkshire Regional School District agreement. There was no mailing beforehand with the agreement itself. So it'd be a big expense. John?
I do think it would be possible, Justin, to, and I think we've done this before, to have copies available at town hall that people can come and get. And, you know, even to have people call who are not mobile, and maybe we can even offer to drop them off at their homes. So I certainly hope that you know, we use every avenue that we can to get the regional agreement out to people before the meeting who can't get it off the website. And by the way, Justin, I really appreciate your being here tonight. I almost feel like all the select board members of all the 8 towns should have been coming and visiting more often, because it really does change the entire tenor of this meeting and these meetings to have you folks who are public officials for your towns but not on the committee coming in every once in a while. So once again, I really appreciate your being here now.
Thanks, John. Bonnie and then Marie.
Did you also, or did anyone also price just a postcard?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's still up there. Okay.
Yeah, that's actually what we sent when we did the survey way back.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Marie?
Lucy, I wanted to kind of mention to them what I told you and Jake about what I asked about the ballots. Is that okay to?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so you all know that it specifically says we have to have printed ballots. I reached out to my town council just to ask them if he thought it was legal to use the voting machine so we wouldn't have to hand count everything. And he said yes. So it's very a timely thing to get your memory cards if you do have a electronic voting machine, to get the memory cards coded and get ballots ordered. So I just wanted to kind of mention that to everyone in case you are interested in your town to do it that way. In West Stockbridge, we are going to use the voting machines for it, so we won't have to do a hand count. So I'm just letting everybody know, you might want to double check with your town council, but ours said it was legal to do that. So that's all.
Bonnie and then Deb.
Just a question. It's more, I guess, for Nadine. Can we do the counting the way we've been doing it for the past couple of years at town meeting with the clicker?
we're not planning to do that, Bonnie, because of the sheer number of people that we're expecting. We do not own our own clickers. So there will be a tear off at the bottom of our ballot. Yes, no, like we used to do with the, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
if
the
we had a
tab.
secret ballot, we would do a yes, no, same thing.
But you can't use the clickers because that's not a ballot. It has to be a
Right.
printed ballot.
Has to be a printed ballot.
Yeah.
So you're using your voting machine to actually count.
With printed ballots. Yep.
I'll toss that out to Phyllis.
It's a very expensive, we kind of looked into it already. It's and time, like Marie said, is of the essence. I mean, getting everything together to be able to get that done in time is questionable. So we're gonna go with the yes, no strip. They just check off whatever one they want and they put the whole strip back in and it gets counted.
Deb?
I was just gonna add to Bonnie's, the other way to get things out to people is with a shopper's guide insert, and I don't know if that's more or less expensive than mailings.
Yeah, we're looking at that too. Decided that the insert was not going to work. But we're gonna have an ad. We're gonna place an ad in the shopper's guide the week before and possibly the week before that. But as Jake said, you know, we're at the bottom of the barrel. There are no dollars left. So we've got to be really judicious. Unless folks want to write a check. John?
Do most towns still send out their warrants, mail their warrants before town meetings? Because Monterey does, and I think other towns do. But that would solve the problem, obviously, if all 8 towns sent out their warrants via mail.
We don't.
Alford doesn't.
We don't.
Sheffield does not.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Okay. Don't see any more public comments. Let me just check. Yeah, don't see any more public comments. So
Motion to adjourn? Is that in order?
it is.
I'll second.
Okay, and before I adjourn the meeting, I really want to thank everyone for the work they've put in on this project. It's been enormous. Really appreciated getting to know all of you. I've learned so much during this process. And I think we did a good job. So thank you to all.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you,
Lucy,
Lucy.
right back at you. I mean, you're the one that has led us so skillfully and substantively through this process. And I know we're in the last lap of this marathon, and it's one that we have to keep our pace strong and steady. But thank you for all that you've done.
Absolutely.
You have-
Absolutely.
Susan Smith has her hand.
Susan?
Hi, Lucy. I just really did want to underline what everyone else has said. I mean, the amount of hours and time that you have put into this and running a full-time, job is just incredible. I mean, I honestly do not know how you have done it. I respect you for that. I respect everyone on this committee for the amount of time and attention they've put into it. It's been a difficult decision. I came at this with an open mind. I learned a lot. I think we have come with the best avenue forward. And I just hope it continues for our kids and our communities. But truly, I did want to thank you publicly for the amount of time, energy, and devotion you have put into this. I don't know if anyone else could have done it, but thank you.
Yep.
You're here.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
All right, well, I'm blushing. So, hearing no objection to the motion to adjourn, we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
Good, everybody.